It was just another quiet morning in the dusty expanse of my ranch, but quiet didn't always mean peace. The wind hadn't yet picked up its usual howl, the sun still low enough to cast long shadows across the cracked earth, as I saddled up for another day of routine checking fences. Feeding the horses something about the stillness felt wrong. The horses were restless, pawing at the ground. I brushed the thought aside, adjusting my rifle's sling over my shoulder as I moved toward the southern line of my land. It had been years since I had to worry about anything more than the dry air and the endless stretch of nothing. Just me and the land. It was enough. At least it used to be. I hadn't realized it then. But I'd be reminded that day how quickly everything could change. The first shot rang out, sharp and sudden. My instincts took over before I even had a chance to process the sound. My rifle was in my hands before my mind caught up, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Another crack echoed through the air. Closer this time, I took cover behind a weathered outcrop of rocks, heart pounding in my chest. The second shot had come from the north. I moved fast, staying low to the ground, my boots kicking up dry dirt. The sound of hooves broke the silence, the distant thunder growing louder by the second. 3 riders. They were coming for me. My eyes narrowed and I tightened my grip on the rifle. I had no intention of letting these bastards take what was mine by the time I'd reached the rise. They were close to close for comfort. I dropped to a crouch, aiming carefully at the lead rider. The sunlight glinted off his rifle, and for a moment I hesitated. But I knew better than to hesitate now. 1 shot. That was all I had. The bullet tore through the air, striking the man's chest. He fell without a sound. The other 2 riders reacted instantly, circling around, pulling their guns. I fired again, hitting the second man in the leg. He screamed, falling from his saddle, writhing in the dirt. The third rider hesitated, eyes flicking from the downed men to me. For a split second, we were locked in a silent standoff, each of us calculating the next move. But I didn't wait. I fired once more, and he dropped like the rest. 3 down, but I wasn't done. I moved quickly, approaching the first rider I'd shot. His body was still warm, but there was no time to savor the victory. My hand went to his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, something that had the weight of more than just a letter. It was a warning, a threat. Before I could make sense of it, I heard a sound, a low groan, a muffled cry. I spun around, rifle raised, ready for more trouble. But what I saw next stopped me dead in my tracks. A woman, covered in dirt, her face pale and drawn, was staggering toward me. She was half-conscious, barely able to stand, her clothes torn and stained with blood. She looked like she'd been through hell. I approached cautiously, rifle lowered, but still in my grip. "You okay?" I asked, the words sounding hollow even to me. I was used to the land, used to the quiet, the solitude, but this was different. She didn't answer at first, her eyes flicking toward the bodies scattered around her. Her lips trembled, and she collapsed into the dirt, her strength completely gone. Without thinking, I dropped to my knees beside her, hands shaking as I reached for her. I didn't know who she was, what had happened to her. But the blood on her skin spoke of something far worse than just a random attack. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her fragile weight against me. "Stay with me," I muttered under my breath, more to myself than to her. But there was no response. I carried her back to my cabin. The same way I'd carried injured cattle or the bodies of men who never came back. But this wasn't the same. This wasn't just a rescue mission. There was something about her that made me want to protect her. Something in her eyes. Empty, hollow. But still fighting to stay alive, I laid her on the cot, then moved quickly, grabbing water, cloths, anything that might help. She didn't speak, didn't make a sound, just watched me with those strange, haunted eyes. It felt like she was waiting for something, waiting for me to do something she couldn't. As I worked, sewing the gash in her side shut, I couldn't help but notice the scars covering her arms. Her neck, places that looked like they had been burned, slashed, or marked by something far worse than just time. I didn't ask her about them, not yet. Not when she was so fragile, so on the edge of breaking. The hours passed. I worked in silence, her breathing steadying. the flicker of the oil lamp casting shadows on the walls. And somewhere between the tension and the silence, I found myself looking at her, really looking at her for the first time. There was a sense of ... something. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was something darker. She was a stranger, a woman I didn't know, and yet I couldn't deny that part of me wanted to keep her safe. Part of me wanted to protect her, to see her smile. Even if I didn't know the first thing about how to do that. Finally, when the wounds were cleaned and wrapped, I sat back on my heels, exhausted. My eyes met hers. For a moment I thought she might say something, but instead, she just stared at me. Her gaze was steady, piercing almost, like she was seeing something inside me I didn't even know was there. I couldn't hold it anymore. I had to ask, what happened to you? Her gaze didn't falter. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she simply shook her head, a silent surrender to whatever had happened before I found her. I couldn't blame her for not wanting to share her past, not when it was so clearly haunted by demons. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. I had no answers for her. But something inside me told me that whatever it was, I couldn't just let her walk away. Not like this. Not after all she'd been through. And that's when I knew. I was stuck, the same way she was. Neither of us had any idea what was coming next, but whatever it was, we were going to face it together. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the land as I stood on the edge of the cabin's porch, the smell of smoke and earth heavy in the air. My rifle was still in my hand, the barrel hot from the shooting, though I hadn't yet shaken off the weight of what had just happened. Rufus Grant was dead. I hadn't wanted to kill him. But when the land you fought for, the people you love, are threatened, sometimes you have no choice. My heart didn't rejoice at the victory. It didn't beat faster with relief. It simply slowed, as if finally understanding the price I had paid behind me. Maria sat in a chair by the fire, her face soft, but shadowed by a look I couldn't quite place. She hadn't said much since the duel, since Rufus fell to the ground with a single shot from my rifle, and I couldn't blame her. There was a weight in the air between us, one that neither of us dared to acknowledge just yet. I turned, my boots scraping against the porch. Her eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. There was something there, something I hadn't seen before. It was like she was seeing me for the first time, not just the man who had fought to protect his land, but the man who had fought to protect her. I walked toward her, slowly, deliberately. My pulse thudded in my ears, the remnants of the battle still clinging to the air, like the smoke from a spent gun. She didn't move as I approached. But there was a subtle shift in her, something that told me she was waiting for me to come to her. I stopped in front of her, standing just close enough to feel the heat from the fire at my back. "You all right?" The question came out rough, unpolished, but I meant it. I needed to know. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand gently on mine, her touch soft but firm, grounding me. For a moment, we just stood there, the world fading around us. The land, the struggle, even the past seemed to fall away. Then, without a word, she pulled me down to her, her lips brushing mine. It was a kiss unlike any other. It wasn't filled with fire or desperation, though there was a deep, unspoken yearning behind it. It was something quieter, more enduring, like a promise. A promise that we had made it this far, and we would make it further together. When we finally pulled away, I didn't know what to say. Words didn't seem to matter in that moment, but Maria's eyes spoke volumes. The weight of her past and her fears written in the flicker of light from the fire. "I never thought I'd find something like this," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. Not after everything. I didn't have an answer for her, not then. I only knew that I couldn't let her go. Not now, not after what we'd been through. The world was cruel and harsh, but with her by my side, it didn't feel as cold as it once had. Betrayal at the heart the next morning. As the first rays of light broke over the horizon, I felt it. A shift in the air? Something was off. I'd grown up on this land, raised to trust the land as much as I trusted myself. But trust had never been something I gave lightly. And I had learned long ago that betrayal didn't announce itself with fanfare, it came quietly. A letter from my old friend Ben, who had helped me secure this land all those years ago. The letter was short and to the point, telling me that a deal had been struck with Rufus Grant, something about a new share of land, a new deal. My gut twisted as I read it, the ink on the page feeling like a lie. I found Ben later that day, in the barn, standing by the horses. His eyes darted to the floor as I approached. "You sold me out," I said, my voice low, thick with disbelief. He didn't answer at first, his face taut with guilt. Finally, he nodded. "I had no choice, Jack." Rufus had. Leverage? I couldn't turn my back on the land. Not with the debts I owe. I felt the sting of the betrayal like a punch to the gut. Ben had been a brother to me. He had known my family, worked alongside me, and shared in every victory and loss. To hear that he had turned his back on me for the sake of a few extra acres of land, it cut deeper than any wound I'd ever known. "You should have come to me," I spat, fists clenched at my sides. "You should have trusted me." "I didn't want to drag you into it," Ben replied, his voice strained. "But it's too late now. Rufus will be back for you, Jack. You've made an enemy of him, and that's something you can't just walk away from. Danger in the wilderness, and, just like that, Ben's words proved true. The very next day, a group of armed men came riding across my land, weapons drawn. I had no choice but to flee to protect Maria and myself. The wilderness was our only hope. Maria didn't hesitate when I told her we had to leave. She packed her things swiftly, her eyes steely with determination. There was no fear in her, not anymore. The woman I had saved, the woman who had been so broken when I first found her, stronger than I had ever imagined. We rode for hours, deeper into the wilds. The landscape here was harsh, rough cliffs, dry riverbeds, and towering mountains. Every twist and turn seemed to bring us closer to danger. The weather was unpredictable, and the sun beat down on us mercilessly. Maria and I spoke little during the journey, our words unnecessary. We were both thinking the same thing: survival. The world around us felt more hostile by the minute. But it was in this wilderness that something began to change. We learned to rely on each other in ways that went beyond words. Maria knew the land, knew the signs of danger, the patterns of the animals. She taught me how to trap and forage, to survive when every step seemed to bring us closer to death. Unlikely allies, after 3 days of traveling, we stumbled upon an old shack, barely standing, its walls sagging with age. Inside, an old man sat by a fire, his long beard reaching down to his chest. His clothes were tattered, his eyes sharp as they studied us from beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "You're a long way from home," he said, his voice gravelly but not unfriendly. "We need help," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Can you show us how to survive out here?" The old man studied us for a moment, then grunted. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood," he said, and with that, he began to teach us. His name was Amos, and he was a relic of the old ways, an eccentric mountain man who had lived alone for decades, far away from civilization. He had nothing to lose and nothing to prove, but he had wisdom that we desperately needed. Over the next few days, he taught us to navigate the harsh desert, to track animals, and to find water in places that seemed barren. In the process, he became an unlikely ally, showing us the way when all we had were our wits and each other. The big confrontation. Wasn't long before Rufus's men found us again. They came at night, riding in from the north, cloaked in the darkness. I heard the hooves before I saw them. My heart sank as I recognized the silhouette of the lead rider. "Stay hidden," I whispered to Maria, my voice low, but she didn't move. Her gaze was fixed on the approaching figures, her hand resting on the knife at her side. "I'm not going to run," she said, her voice steady, and just like that I knew. We were in this together, no matter the cost. Rufus's men dismounted, surrounding our camp, their weapons drawn. The standoff was inevitable, and it wasn't long before the first shot was fired. I dove to the ground, firing back. Maria fought with a fierceness that surprised me, her eyes burning with a resolve I hadn't seen before. The healing begins. The battle raged on until the dawn, and when the dust settled, the men were gone. But Maria and I were left to pick up the pieces of our lives once more. In the quiet that followed, we spoke little. But the silence between us spoke volumes. Maria's wounds were deeper than the physical ones. She had never fully healed from her past, and neither had I. But in that moment, as we sat by the fire, tending to our injuries, I realized that we had a chance. Together, we could heal. I leaned over, my fingers brushing hers in a quiet promise. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew this Maria and I were no longer just survivors. We were something more. We were a team.